think the crypto market is going to full on reverse to the upside a lot sooner than most people are thinking. Because right now, most people think a bear market started a few months ago. And if that's true, and we're still in the 4-year cycle, as many people actually believe for some reason, well, if that's the case, and we're in a bear market that just started, then we should expect the market to hit a new all-time high sometime in late 2029, maybe early 2030. And now look, I don't know exactly when we're going to hit new highs, but I'm going to give you reasons that it does not make sense to believe that we're going to have to wait that long, not even close. And I really do suspect that the analysts predicting a proper alt season, roughly within the next year, I will not be at all surprised if they end up being proven correct. And because that would certainly align with all the macro factors that I continue to track. But before going further, I do want to be clear, I do not have a financial background of any kind. I am not offering financial advice. And you definitely should not buy or sell anything because of anything I say or write. I'm just an enthusiast who enjoys making YouTube videos about crypto-related topics, but just as a hobby and just for fun. And it's so fascinating looking at the screen right now. XRP at $1.36, Bitcoin at $66,354. A couple of things come to mind. I'm just sitting back to my last, over 8 years in crypto as an XRP holder, just thinking about how most of the time when I'd open this webpage right here, Live Coin Watch, XRP would be like 30 cents. And here it is at $1.36, and that's when it's being suppressed by market conditions. So, I mean, just a little perspective there. But also, I firmly believe if you look to by the time we're in the throes of the next market cycle, like way, way, way in the future, and you look back to this point, you'll be like, wow, that was cheap. XRP really did used to be that cheap. I think that's coming. In fact, I think XRP is going way higher. There's this post from chart analyst Austin, and he wrote, XRP is a multi-trillion-dollar asset trading under $100 billion. Act accordingly. And indeed, the market cap, as I record this based on current circulating supply, it's about $83 billion. And so that is a big thing to say if you're talking about XRP, being worth trillions of dollars, a multi-trillion-dollar market cap. But look, I do think that there will be multiple coins with multi-trillion-dollar market caps if you fast forward into the future. I mean, and it's really not crazy to speculate that XRP could be one of those coins, especially if you're like me and believe that eventually the crypto asset class, just the whole thing, the whole asset class, if you believe it's going to be worth even just $100 trillion one day, which I don't think is frankly a very big ask. Because, just a $4 trillion market cap for XRP would make XRP worth $65. And you understand, that would only be 4% of the market at 100 trillion. If the asset class is worth 100 trillion, if XRP is only 4%, you're at $65 already. I will remind you, as I record this, the current XRP market dominance percentage level, it is right now today close to 4%. So if it just maintains that 4% and the asset class gets that big and it holds on to that percentage of the pie, voila, $65. Now, of course, it doesn't have to stay at 4%. What if it goes to 8%? Well, then you're looking at closer to $130 per XRP and an $8 trillion market cap. Now, I'm not in the game of making price predictions. I admit I do not know where the price of XRP is going. It's possible the price of XRP could go to zero. Maybe I'm wrong to think that it's going to trend higher as time passes. I could be wrong about that. But my conviction, I believe, is very well placed. And I do believe if you just fast forward far enough into the future, whatever that's going to be, you're going to see multiple coins with multi-trillion-dollar market caps. And I don't see why XRP couldn't be one of them. Why the hell not? It's functionally useful. Don't you think that matters? I mean, on that point, here's a post from chart analyst Bird, because he was talking about how $100 XRP isn't crazy. I don't think it's crazy either. I only think it's crazy if you're saying it's going to happen this market cycle. That's where you lose me. But if you're just saying big picture when the asset class is fully matured, and yeah, not the least bit insane. Absolutely not. We already know that cryptocurrencies can be worth multi-trillions because it's already happened to one, Bitcoin. Why can't it happen to ones that are functionally more useful? Well, I think it can. I think it will. Here's what Bird had to say. $100 XRP isn't an insane prediction when you actually understand what the XRP ledger is capable of. The XRP ledger can tokenize real-world assets with classes worth tens of trillions, treasury bonds, land, gold, silver, diamonds, multiple global currencies, and that's just the surface. Add in liquidity pools, locked yield mechanisms, on-chain settlement, and the broader tokenization trend, and you start to see the scale of what's possible in the tens, if not hundreds of trillions. When real-world value moves on-chain, networks that handle efficiently win equals XRPL. That's the bigger picture most people are missing. Yeah, and so I broadly agree with that. Now, of course, it's not the case that if you have $10 trillion tokenized, that means XRP has a market cap of 10 trillion. That's not how that works. And he didn't say that, but I just want to be clear. Obviously, that's not how that works. But if you have a $4 trillion, I don't care what number you pick, $4 trillion market cap for XRP, if that ever happens, way less money than that actually has to flow into XRP to bid the price up that high. As you throw money in, the price gets bid higher and higher and higher. And then when you just take the current market rate times circulating supply, that's how you get to those bigger numbers in terms of market cap. But it doesn't mean $4 trillion flowed in. You don't need that to happen. It's much easier for this to happen than I think some people recognize. But it'll just happen because crypto's useful and people like to diversify. And of course, XRP, it just makes sense to have that be a piece of the pie. That's all I'm saying here. And as far as, this happening sooner rather than later, let's talk a little bit about that. Here's a post from chart analyst Melius. I like this. This is great. This guy's sharp. So up top, he's got a trading pair that most people wouldn't ever look at because it's not something you can actually trade on an exchange, but it's copper priced against the S&P 500. That's what SPX stands for. That's the ticker symbol for it. And then below that, you've got the price of Bitcoin going back to like 2015. And below that, you have altcoins. It's the others chart. So it's the top 125 coins by market cap, excluding the top 10. And that's called others. And here's what he had to say about this. And he makes great points here. Check this out. I don't believe we continue into an extended bear market here. Yes, you've heard it right. As usual, I like to play with ratios, and this time I present you a copper/SPX, which after a successful breakout of diagonal resistance prints a buy signal for risk on assets, i.e. Bitcoin and alts. 2016 breakout led to a parabolic advance on Bitcoin and alts, and same happened in 2020. Most importantly, this ratio also tops before Bitcoin and alts and prints a bearish divergence after magic coins go to their final highs. In my view, market should recover soon, which in case of Bitcoin should lead to a retracement rally at least, during which alts should outperform. So that means alt season. That's what he's hitting at there. It says bullish case is new highs on Bitcoin, which would be in accordance with this signal. But once again, probability of an extended bear market is extremely low, in my view, despite all the bearishness across the board. So guys, copper/SPX is shy of breaking out. And this all makes logical sense. So if you're looking at the screen, see how I'm moving my mouse up here. He's pointing out, and so you can see when it broke out. So eventually, it's like I always say, markets always find bottoms. Pick a trading pair, whatever it is, it's going to find a bottom, unless it's actually going to zero. But of course, this isn't. And so here you can see it was trending down for however many years. And then it finally broke out in 2016. And then it hit a high here. Copper did. And it makes sense that it broke out. And then you saw Bitcoin go after, because it's always been the case that as the economy heats up, copper is used for manufacturing purposes, and as a result, it gets bought more, so purchases also, and then supply and demand does its thing. As there's more dollars chasing copper, the price of it goes up, so it becomes more valuable relative to anything else, including here he compared it to the S&P 500. That's fine. And so look at it though; it found this peak here. And then it was afterwards that Bitcoin and altcoins hit their peak. And that makes logical sense. The market gets hot, things get moving. And it's not until after that you end up seeing risk on assets like crypto, the riskiest assets on the planet, finally start hitting their peaks. So that makes sense. And so then that was 2017. You can see it just trended down, finally had a breakout. Same story here. And see, it hit its peak 2021, and it wasn't until later on that Bitcoin and altcoins hit their peak later in 2021. And what he's saying is the same damn thing's happening again. We're butting up against this trend line, and it's just one more point of confluence where you can be like, guys, looks like it's probably going to break out. And it does make sense to see that. And I mean, we've seen, and I've shown you other charts too from other analysts where they're pricing copper against gold. That's at a bottom. That's at a multi-year low. And that's what you'd expect because gold ran, and historically gold runs, it's a risk-off asset. Gold runs, and then copper ends up running after it because it is ultimately used in manufacturing. And so it finds its bottom, and then that's also at the same time you see, crypto ultimately, later on pick up after gold. So all of that makes sense. I can't imagine not being excited for being based on this setup. And then take a look at this post. This is from chart analyst Osemka. And so he's got IWM priced against the S&P 500. IWM is the ticker symbol for the Russell 2000, which is a small cap stock index. And the SPX, like I told you, is the S&P 500. So the Russell 2000, again, being small caps, means that what he's showing on this chart is small cap stocks, which are riskier and they're further out the risk curve. It shows those small cap stocks priced against large cap stocks, which would be the S&P 500. And as you can see, for years and years and years, the small cap stocks have just been losing value relative to the large cap stocks. And things are cyclical, so okay. But they have in a big way, a very notable way, actually. That's why he's highlighting this. And so here's what Osemka had to say. Extreme risk on period coming up. As some of you might remember, we did technical analysis on IWM/SPX back in August and said that the ratio should break up. This means low cap stocks to outperform big caps for quite a long time. Since this is a 6-month chart, we've compared it to. Crypto is at a receiving end of this, benefiting once capital is ready to flow into the riskiest sector. Relative Strength Index is right at diagonal of a 15-year-long downtrend on the 6-month. So that's a 6-month time frame is what he means when he says that. This is another chart in line with copper, implying we probably can't go comparing any prior cycle to this one because of such a higher time frame breakout. So he's saying if you're looking at this pair specifically, that it's been building up to this point for so long that this aspect has never been present in any other cycle, this particular thing. So it doesn't mean this time is different. Usually when people say that, what they actually mean is something in a huge fundamental way shifted. That's not the argument that he's making here. He's just saying something kind of notable is what it is in this particular case that you haven't seen in other cycles, which is a different argument. There's nuance to this, obviously. But look at what's happening. I'm telling you, folks, I think that history is just going to keep rhyming with itself. Things are going to take off. The altcoins, small caps first, then crypto. There's a post here from chart analyst Psychedelic. He does not believe we're in a bear market. And he was making fun of the New York Times since crypto's down 50%. Of course, this is when the stupid ass headlines come out. There's a New York Times article. I talked about it in a video the other day. It was titled, "Crypto is Pointless. Not even the White House can fix that." And I had a fun time shredding that. But he's just pointing out, hey, price is low. That's why that comes out. And then when the prices are high, you get more positive headlines. And that is true. And so he said, there you go. There we go. Thank you, New York Times. The perfect top and bottom signal. Send it. Now, somebody named Anonymous responded to him and is not on the same page. This guy on X wrote, when has Bitcoin only dropped 50% in a bear market before heading back into a bull market? You have no clue on what you are talking about. You are going to look really stupid in Q4 of this year when we actually do bottom much lower, mark my words. So he's saying, oh, what, you think that the bottom's in now? Bitcoin only fell halfway, 50%. There's never been such a small drop to conclude a bear market, which means that Bitcoin's got to go way lower. I guess $30,000, right? Would that do it? Would that do it, Anonymous? And Psychedelic had the perfect response to this because this guy who thinks that he is wise here is definitely not so wise. And here's what Psychedelic had to say. If you are so smart, answer me this. When has Bitcoin ever entered a prolonged bear market as the business cycle expands? It hasn't. And I will pause to note that is true. The business cycle has certainly bottomed out. Wait for that thing to rip to the upside. Bitcoin has never entered a prolonged bear market as the business cycle expands. And that's why I said like a couple videos ago, I was like, guys, literally there has never been a macro setup where all of these things are going great and crypto just goes in a bear market because reasons. It's never happened in the history, the 17 plus year history of this asset class. Never, never, never. And it doesn't make sense that it would. It would make sense after things get overheated and then you finish the cycle and then fine. And things rotate. Got it. We're not there. We are not there, folks. And then he says your rationale is that we cannot only drop 50% simply because it never happened before. In that case, how did we, for the first time this cycle, number one, make a new all-time high before the halving? Number two, never enter overbought. So of course he's talking about relative strength index. We never enter, the overbought territory. Number three, only 3 main projects make all-time highs. So pause to remind you here. Again, he's not saying those famous terrible last words, this time is different. That's not what he means. He's a smart guy. He understands that there will be metrics, various things that are different from cycle to cycle. And so that's why if you're saying so-and-so hasn't happened before, therefore, whatever has happened before, I insist that it's going to happen again. That's stupid. That is wrong because in fact, if anything, you need to look at the things that drive the markets. That's why I keep going back to macro, because it is macro that drives the markets. It's macro that results in whatever you see in the charts. Charts are downstream from macro. They always will be. Macro matters more. Charts can be used as supplemental evidence to support your macro thesis. That's the right way to do this. Okay. So yeah, there are some things that are a little bit different from cycle to cycle, but when we say this time is different, understand that people really mean something fundamental, right? It's not what he's talking about here. He says your arrogance is blinding. Your arrogance is blinding you to the fact you can't see beyond what has happened in the past. You don't have the foresight to look beyond and see a different cycle. And at the same time, you call me stupid. We will see who looks stupid in Q4, my friend. I hope you're ready to back up your BS and keep the same energy when you're wrong and have been chatting rubbish all over my page. Yeah. I don't think you're going to be getting apologies from him. He's just going to go run away and, if anything, delete his stupid. I'm not a financial advisor. You should not buy or sell anything because of anything I say or write.